This is the demo scene for the stats and skill. Now, bear with this video. This is not pretty. This demo scene is not pretty, but it is powerful, and I think you'll enjoy what this module can do for you. And we're going to start by just showcasing this demo scene, and then I'm going to go through the setup and creation of an entire data structure for this scene. It doesn't take that long, and it's pretty powerful. So in this scene, we've got 4 randomly created characters. They've got random names. Their classes and races are selected randomly, and you can modify these with this demo scene. Now, keep in mind, just because this is fantasy RPG, you don't have to use this for fantasy RPG. You don't even have to use all the parts. Like if you don't want to use character classes or races, you don't have to. Everything this is very modular, where you can use what you want and not use what you don't want, and really get into whatever parts you like, and you can even extend it pretty easily. So there's a lot you can do with here, so don't feel like you're limited by what you see here on the screen. So if I select this character, you can see that we've got different stats here. The default is all 11, but some of them are higher because of the dwarf archer. So if I change this to a knight, you'll see the stats move around and some went lower. And that's because with this system, a stat is something that can be modified by other stats or skills, or later by perhaps items or conditions such as poisoned or heroism or whatever you want to make up for your game. And so in this case, as I change the class, or if I change the race of the character, the default stats will change. Now, I can of course add point values, and as I do that with these, the math is done auto-magically through the scripts that I create for this demo scene. A lot of this stuff is something you might have to do some coding on your own, simply because this doesn't do everything for you. Instead of forcing you to make your project work around this module, I want this module to fit seamlessly into any project. And so it has a whole lot of methods that we'll look at real quick that help you out. But for the most part, there's a lot of stuff that you might want to code yourself, and this is one of those things where I'm computing the final might value based on a bunch of things like the race and the class, etc. Now, down here you have the hit points. Those are also something that's modified by these values. So if I'm an archer and a half orc, then I've got 45 hit points and 15 magic points. This bodybuilding is a learned skill that increases my hit points. So as I get more as I turn that on, I get an extra 10% hit points. Then there is the meditation, which gives me a 10% boost to spell points. Skill Master is one that I've created just for this demo scene, which actually gives a bonus to all the other skills. So now with Skill Master on versus off, you see there's an additional 10% boost to the bodybuilding skill. If I go into my actual data structure, we can actually see how this works. Oops, sorry, I should do it up here. And I've got my player here, and let's see, all of our stats and skills that were set up through this. Skill Master here, if I'm going to add points, this is the basic point value. You can ignore this because this is just the raw data. All these helper classes make it easier in the inspector to manage these. But if I'm going to increase my point value, you can actually see the hit points going up, because as this goes up, it's actually increasing the proficiency of bodybuilding. And if we expand bodybuilding here, there's bodybuilding, if I can find it, you can see the final proficiency is 4, now 5, now 6, etc. Because in this script, or rather in this skill data objects, we have all of these in the Skill Master. You can see that at the novice level, it provides a base value boost of 0 to everything, and a value per skill point boost of 1 to all their proficiencies. And so you can set these up for each of the 4 preset mastery levels, which you can rename. They don't have to be novice and expert, etc. You can rename those. But that way, as the player progresses, all of these work intertwined together, so you don't have to do anything beyond the setup to really just make it all magically work. Similar with learning here, learning, and I can bring that up so you can see on both sides. Learning will boost the Here we go. The experience mod, which is itself a skill or a stat that the player won't be able to see. But I use that because with the learning off, I can get 100 experience points, and you can see it goes up by 100. But if I turn learning on, then I get a base proficiency of 9% increase plus a per stat increase of 1. So by just having that on, I'm going to get a 10% boost to my experience mod. And as you can see, I'm now getting I'm getting a double. Oh, because I have Skill Master on. If I turn Skill Master off, then I'm only getting 110. So I'm getting a boost to my experience because I have learning as a skill. So that is something that that actual method is something I coded outside of the module. It's something you can take from the demo scene. It's all in the demo game control and whoops, wrong button. It's all in this script and the player script, so you can definitely pull from that. But this is definitely something that I code just for this experience, strictly for this demo, as it says here, where basically I'm giving the experience amount, in this case 100, and then I am multiplying that value by the experience mod, which is another stat right here, experience mod. So you can see the final value is going to be 1 times 1.1. This will the 1 is added later. So if this were -1, then it would be a reduction in the total amount. And then going back to writer here, and then finally the we just get the stat, we add into the points and experience value. So that's how it works in the demo scene. So let's go ahead and set this up. And in the process, we're going to go through all of these and see what each one of these does. And we're going to start from scratch. So in this case, I've created a brand new folder that's going to house all of my information. So I'm going to start by just right-clicking, so create RPG game, new RPG data scriptable object. And I'm not going to change the name or anything. And that's going to create a bunch of other scriptable objects. And if I go into here, it should re-import shortly. You see this little wheel down here going, so that should re-import in just a second. And when it does, the inspector window will pop up as expected. There we go. So now we've got character classes, character races, these stat and skill data objects, which are really created by this stat or skills module. And so we're going to start by creating some character classes. If you notice, in this structure we just have these scriptable objects, but now I'm going to start by just creating a knight. And a new folder is created. If we go in there, you have the knight scriptable object. Now, I do warn you here, don't edit this object itself. You can check it out, but really, you can edit all of this stuff, all the important stuff really, just by going to the character classes and then expanding the knight information right there. So I'm just going to add a few more classes. Alright, if you ever make a mistake, you can rename these, and if I expand here, you can see the druid object right there. You can rename these to whatever you'd like. You can't rename it to something that's already there, but when you do, all the connections should be renamed for you. If I were to rename this to be something else, then it should revert back when I come over to the character classes again, and it will revert back to Paladin. Because they do really need to be the same name. So you don't want to edit these objects outside of the inspector here. So now, before we move on to the next, to the details, I'm going to add some races as well. Similarly, I'm just going to add them all to this list here. And then I'm going to add some stats or skills. This is going to be a fairly long list, but I'm going to add a combination of different things. So the first group I'm going to add are going to be the main stats, the might through luck that you see on the demo screen. So those are the main stats that a player can upgrade, and if we expand these, you can see that there's options here, whether they can be trained or modified. Now these can't be trained. You can't become an expert at luck, for instance, in this game. So I'm going to just toggle those off for all of these, but they can be modified, and so I'm going to start with them at a point value of 11 for each of these, and then the points are really considered to be something that the player will add or get added to throughout the game. So as they, get another point of might, that will change this, but the final value will be modified by various things. It will have the base value added and the base proficient, and then ultimately the proficiency will be multiplied. So if the proficiency is 0.1, you'll get a 10% boost. If it's negative 0.1, you'll get a reduction from the total straight value. Whoops, turn that off. So we're going to do that for all of these. Just set all of these base values to 11 because that's where we want the players to start with their stats. All right, now I'm going to add some of the other things. Like hit points. So in this one, we're going to add both hit points max and hit points. So hit points max will be the maximum hit points available, and the hit points will be the actual current hit points, the live during the game. And I'm going to add some other things like the player level and probably the experience. We need to keep track of that. And then I'm also going to add one called an experience mod. I'm going to spell it correctly. I'm going to add that. Now, experience mod is not going to be something the player actually sees. For the experience, we're going to say it can't be trained and it can't be modified. Basically, however many points is however many points they have. For level, it can't be trained, but it can be modified. And for magic points, again, it can't be trained and it can't be modified. Magic points. I can't spell. There we go. And magic points with an S. There we go. Magic point max, however, can be modified because some of these other things might modify the maximum number of magic or hit points. But for experience mod is going to be something that you can't train but can be modified because I want other things to be able to change this value. And in my own custom script, the script I wrote for this demo scene, I'm going to multiply any experience a player receives by the player modification. Player mod, or experience mod rather. That way, if the proficiency is say 0.1, that means they'll get a 10% boost to all experience earned just for that player. So it's a nice easy way of not needing to worry about doing the math on every time experience is earned. It's just automatically computed for you through this whole system. All right. So next one you might need is armor class, and then I'm going to add a bunch of other learned skills, things the player can learn, starting with a bunch of weapons and armor. All right, and I'm also going to add some magic skills. All right, and then some other skills that the player might be able to learn that do that would give other benefits beyond being able to use a weapon or learn some spells. Okay, now all of these skills can be trained and can be modified. We could probably turn off armor class, can't be trained, and the rest of these can all be trained and modified. So let's go deeper into these skills themselves before setting up the characters and the races. So if you click on skill data object, you'll find a list of all the trainable skills. Now you can get to these same ones by expanding any of these and clicking there. They're all stored here. You'll notice that even the ones that can't be trained are stored here, but if you select the skill data objects, you'll only see the ones that can be trained. So I'm going to focus on these down here, these ones that do other things besides equipping weapons, armor, or magic spells. So let's start with learning. If we click on this, you can see I've got some hard-coded things. Is equip skill, is magic skill. Those are great if you want to use them. You don't have to use them. This is one of those things where while this module has these available, you don't really have to use them if you don't want to. You can also expand the scripts as well if you want to add something bespoke for your project. Now, what we have here is all the different skills that could be manipulated or modified by learning. So there's a whole lot available here. These are all the ones that are modifiable, including experience mod. So I'm going to select that one and click add. Now they added to all of these, and there's a bunch. Each one has 3 different levels. So we're going to focus just on the novice because each one is has the same options but is intended to be more powerful than the last. If you want to use the cost of this skill, you could write that here. If you have a description, you could write that here. And you don't have to use those again as well. And so when we expand these, we see base values, values per skill point, and values per level. The idea here is that the learning skill will modify experience mod by either a base value and or a base proficiency as a base, just because you have this skill, you've learned this skill, an additional value for every skill point assigned to the learning skill, and then an additional value for each level the player is if you pass that in and do the math on it. And so for this one, I'm going to add a base proficiency of 0.09 as a base and a proficiency per skill point of 0.01. So at one skill point, that will be a total of 0.1 or a 10% boost to experience mod. And that's what will give us a 10% increase to all of our experience. At expert level, you might say, okay, well, this should be more powerful. So I might give a 0.1 and a 0.02 for a total of a 20% at the base and then an additional 2% per skill point. For this one, I'm not going to modify it at all by level, so we'll just close that. And then let's check out some of the other ones. Let's see, we have Skill Master. And Skill Master is an interesting one because for this one, I'm going to say that it boosts all the other learnable skills, the non-weapon skills, etc. So we're going to add, and I'll expand this list so we can see them as they get added, meditation and bodybuilding and Spell Master. You can see they get dropped off of this list as you get added there, and also learning. And now, because I've added all of these, we've got this base value here. So I'm going to add a base value of 1 for, not for the base value, the value per skill point, give a 1. So basically, each of these, actually, let me change that, 0.25, 1 would be probably too powerful. This will give a 25% boost to the skill points for all of these skills for every skill point assigned to Skill Master at the novice level. And that's just going to make them more powerful. Now these will stack, so when I have both Skill Master and Learning, I'm going to get more than a 10% boost to my experience because Skill Master will actually increase the proficiency of Learning, which increases the modifier for experience. And then let's go to the next one and create Spellmaster. And for Spellmaster, I'll take the different fire magic and all the different magics. And again, I might set this up so that the spells are more powerful depending on how I do the math. Now, this doesn't tell you what part of this value goes into making a spell more powerful. But in essence, I might want to say, okay, I get a 0.9% or 9%, 0.09 boost for all of the spells by its surface, and like the learning, an additional boost here. So that's 10%. Now, maybe this value of fire magic value, given a 10% boost, will give a 10% increase in all the damage. I don't know. That's completely up to you to decide how it fits into your game. But the system here allows you to quickly set these links up, set this data up so that you can easily manipulate it later without having to do all the extra legwork. All right, so let's do two more, just the bodybuilding and the meditation, just as examples because they're part of this scene here and you can see the effects. For bodybuilding, we're going to increase the maximum hit points. Again, base proficiency of 0.09, so a total of 10%. Meditation will do the same thing, but with the magic points max. All right. So we've set up a bunch of these now, and if we go back into these, we can see some more information. You can see that learning is affected by Skill Master at branch 0. Branch 0 means that there's just one level below it. There's only one level of things that affect it, and it's kind of like a tree going up, and that's there to make sure you don't have any circular logic where you could have an infinite loop where one thing affects another, which affects another, which affects the first, and go on, so forth. So if we look at Skill Master, nothing is affected by Skill Master. But if we look at Experience Mod, you can see that it's affected by 2 other stat or skills, both learning and then beneath that, skill master. So in the back end, when you look at the actual code, you'll notice that whenever we compute the final mod and we do the full tree computation or the final value for this experience mod, we're first going to compute the final value for skill master and then learning and then experience mod, because this is affected by those. So we'll start with all the branch 0, basically the deepest branches. This could go infinite, and then go up the list there. All right, let's check out the character classes now. For each one of these, we've got a few options. One, whether it's a base class. If it is a base class, then perhaps this is something your script will use in a character creation scene to allow the user to choose from. Now in my demo scene, I didn't code that, but that is something you could code. Otherwise, you can choose from another class that this can be a child of. So perhaps, for instance, Knight has to be the parent class of Knight is a Paladin, for instance. So you can use that in different ways as well. Also, hard-coded, you don't have to use these, is where you get your magic spells resources from, your magic points from. That's something I'm going to be using in my game. You don't have to use it for yours. And a disposition, good, neutral, and evil. The more exciting stuff is here, where you have base skills. Now again, if this is something like a character creation scene, you might want to just have a list of base skills that the knight can learn at the beginning of the game. And maybe you add a few of those for each ones, and then you call on this list when you're doing your character creation scene. If you happen to have the Infinity PBR character creation module, then you might be familiar with that concept already. The other big thing is these values here. Now every value that is going to be listed here that can be modified. And there's base values and proficiencies for this class. And this is what we saw earlier, where as a knight, there was some increases to some of these stats. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up. I'm just going to give a 0.2 boost for 1 stat for each of these. And I'm also going to set up my hit point max and magic point max for each of these. In this case, I'm going to set the base value because these are going to be hard-coded numbers. So we take a total of maybe 20 for each of the classes and give 20 hit points but no magic points to them. So I'm going to do this similarly to all of the different classes here. Alright, and similar to that, the races have the exact same options as far as show values and show base skills, the values of base skills, but they also have different options for names and colors. So I'm going to just say dwarf male 1 and dwarf male 2, just to give some options to choose from. These are going to be used on the player setup to create some standard names to start with, but you can use this however you'd like. There's both male names and female names. Again, this is something you don't have to use, but you're welcome to use. I'm also going to use in my character creation scene, in the module we have already up, skin tones and hair colors. So you can set those up here as well, where you can just choose a whole bunch, or choose one skin tone, or and just basically change it here, or add it up here. Choose one that you like, probably bring the that up right there, and then add that, and then just make small modifications to it and whatnot. So you can do that as well optionally. So for these, I'm going to add some names, and I'm also going to do some base values and proficiencies for each of these as well. All right. With those set up, we should be pretty much good to go. One other thing, if you look at the RPG data, there's really not much here. You can see help boxes if you'd like, and see some basic details about things set up. There's also links to these required objects. Don't delete those. They will be recreated, but you'll lose your data. And then there's the full inspector if you want to really dig down deep into that. So let's go ahead and just press play and make sure that everything is... Oop, I think I need to relink my RPG data. Yep. Let's do that. So game control is going to missing our RPG data. So I'm just going to bring that right over there and press play. Let's see what happens. All right. So we have different characters, different names, all random things set up. We can change these values around and everything works. We can add some experience. One issue there, you see that 1 there, so you want to go down to the experience and change that point to be 0 because they're going to start off with 0 experience points. Same with armor class and some other things. Other skills like you learned, I want to start off with 0.1 because that's your one thing. So if we change bodybuilding, our hit points go up. If we do learning, then we get more experience. If we do meditation, our magic points go up. And if we do skill master, then all of those go up, as well as our we get some additional experience. So how does this work? Let's dig deeper into the scripts. So on my demo scene, I've got a demo scene game controller. Now you can read through these. I've tried to comment it pretty well so you can read through, and it's not terribly long. But we have a few methods that are going to drive the character setup screen, such as toggling a skill on or off, or saying the active player, etc. And we also have some helper properties, I believe they're called up here, where it's easier to get like the active player, so you don't have to, you can just call active player, toggle skill. And then let's check out the player themselves, demo player. Now this is a little longer. There's more helper methods here. Again, they're all commented, so you can take from them what you'd like. And this is the thing that you're going to have to code for yourself. I know that can be daunting, but the benefit is that you really get to make this something that works for you the way you want it to work, rather than something that is so rigid that you aren't able to effectively do what you want with it because it can't do certain things, or you have to do weird workarounds to get it to do what you want. So for this demo, we have a few things like learning a skill, and you can unlearn with false, and then we have another one called toggle skill, which just turns it on or off, and that's what I use for these buttons there, for the toggle buttons for the skills. It just turns that on or off. We also have whether we've learned a skill, so it just tells returns true if the player has learned a skill, and this is going to go through their learned skills, because in the player so if right here, I missed it. In the player here, we have the list of learned skills. It's just a string list, but it's going to keep track of what skills we've learned, so I can more easily call those skill data later. So we've got that. We've got the get final stat. This one's going to go through and find the right stat by a name. So you can get final stat experience or get final stat might, for instance. It's going to compute the stats, including the whole tree, and then return the final stat for you. And that will give you the most up-to-date stat for your project or for your data. And then we have this compute final stats. Now again, this is something you can copy and utilize for your own. There's some good amount of math here, but it's something that you might want to add or delete things to. So for my project, I'm definitely going to be using character classes and character races. And so I've added those here. We start with just other value is going to be 0 and 0. And we're going to add the values from the character class and the character race, things like the might proficiency and the other proficiencies and the other values for the hit points and stuff. And then we're going to go through all of our learned skills. Essentially, this is just going to find the skills that we've already learned. And if that skill is affected, if our current skill that we're computing is affected by that learned skill, then it's going to pull those values from that learned skill. Now we've already computed those skills right here with this compute tree values, so we know that these are the most final up-to-date skills. One caveat is that for the level, because we don't want to create a circular logic where level is something that can be modified itself, we've hard-coded the level to be you might want to hard code the level to be just the points rather than the final stat, but that's going to depend on your game. If your game isn't going to have an issue with that, then choose the final stat for the level, because there is the base value per level and you don't want to run into circular logic there. Finally, we're going to return the final value, which is going to be our current points plus our base value plus all the other values, which is everything we've computed here, and the final proficiency, which is our base proficiency plus all the other proficiency we've computed here. This is the method that computes the final stats for all the tree values. You'll notice that we do not compute the whole tree for these ones, because each one is going to be done in reverse order in the branches, so we don't have to worry about doing the trees for those. Finally, there's a method here. Not finally, there's a few more. There's a method here for finding out if something is in the deepest branch, and if it is the deepest branch will return true. And then we're going to get the stat or skill. Another get stat points. That's the raw points. So if you're looking for experience points, you can just call get stat points experience, and this will return the right value. You can set the stat points, and you can also add stat or skill points. And that's for if you want to add 1 or add 100, or if you want to just set, oh, it's going to be 10 or it's going to be 5,000, then you can do that as well. And then for this demo, I've done this give experience, where it's literally just saying take the experience value, multiply it by the experience mod, and then get the experience or add it to the experience points. So those are those methods there. All the other scripts are commented where appropriate and aren't too complicated to go through, and they're open to extensions if you so choose. So there's a lot there for you to check out as well. That's basically it. As you can see, it's pretty easy to set up. It's pretty easy to add to, and there is some bonus stuff there as well, in the form of special dictionary and list methods, which I don't use in this, but might come in handy if you want to extend this a little bit further. So thanks for sticking through the video. I know it wasn't super pretty to look at with all these basic UI elements, but hopefully you can see the power and how this could make use in your project for creating and then also connecting all the different data points that you might need in creative ways in order to make your life a little bit easier. All right, have a great day. All right, if anyone's actually watching, I don't think anyone is. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful night or day, and I will see you soon.